Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm Erica from Eggersmann Kitchens and Home Living, and we're really excited to host today's webinar. Joining us today are my team members, Ralph, Julian, and Lorena here from the Design Center in Florida. Eggersmann is a fourth generation German company and the oldest family-owned kitchen manufacturer in Germany. This year, we're celebrating 113 years, and we're known for taking modern design to the next level with our unique line of exceptional cabinetry designs made of granite, marble, quartz, and steel finishes. Eggersmann has a reputation for sustainability. Our certified wood veneers, lacquer finishes, and high gloss lacquer texture and matte finishes are available in unlimited color combinations and celebrated for its award-winning state-of-the-art interior accessories. The company also enjoys a remarkable reputation for its flexibility in custom cabinetry sizing. I would like to now introduce Jacqueline Terrebonne. She is a New York editorial professional with over 15 years in food, fashion, and entertainment publishing. Jacqueline now serves as editor-in-chief for Galerie Magazine after originally joining the team in the role of design editor in 2016. Welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm thrilled to be a part of this panel today. It's a subject that is near and dear to my heart, all about books, and who doesn't love design books. And the panel that we have assembled today is absolutely fantastic. They're true experts in the field of both design and of creating fantastic books. I have Jeffrey Bilhuber, Kate Hume, and Celery Kimball. Jeffrey, I would say, has an incredible experience in creating books. He has 5 books under his belt, and his most recent, Everyday Decorating, came out in 2019, and I actually had the pleasure of working with him on that book. It really brought to life so much of the intelligence, of the spirit, of all of the experience that Jeffrey has accumulated in his distinguished career as an interior designer. Working.
So glad you didn't say lengthy in his distinguished.
No. Lengthy, just
drawn out.
let me go to the timeline. No, it's really a who's who list of clients that he's worked with, and the projects he creates are absolutely magnificent. Kate Hume is another fantastic designer who's joining us today. She had a book come out with Rizzoli in November of 2020 called Elan, The Interiors of Kate Hume. She's based in Amsterdam, although that is not where she is today. And she has a very interesting practice of over 20 years in Europe, and really bringing an interesting sense of color and eclectic finds to each of her projects. So Kate, thank you for joining us. And Celery Kimball, who I'm thrilled to have with us today. She has created so many spirited and lively interiors, and I really feel like every time I see a project that you've done, it makes me smile. Like there's a glow about them. And certainly your new book out in April with Rizzoli, Island Whimsy, does that even more so than anything else I've ever seen. It's like a breath of fresh air, and I just want to dive into the pool and hang out in one of those wicker chairs on the lawn. It's an absolutely incredible book. So thank you to all 3 of the panelists for being here today. I think it's going to be a really interesting talk. I just want to start off with a super basic question for all of you. And, how did you know that you wanted to do a book? Where did that come from? Jeffrey, how did you know when you created that first book? Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. Thank you for asking. I was sure that my gals were going to go first, but this may help open up the conversation to how to get a book published or how to make a better book. I actually didn't know that I had the opportunity to put a book into market. This was book number 1, which was Design Basic quite some time ago. And I got a call from Charles Myers, who is the publisher at Rizzoli, which is completely unexpected. And he said, we would like to publish your first book. And I said, but I don't have a first book. And he said, we know that, but we know that we know that you have a first book in you, which was really interesting. And I think what we all benefit from is knowing that there are people behind us who are there to shore us up, who are there to cheer us on, who are there to encourage us and bring out the best, whether it's a great publisher or a great editor or a great writer. I didn't have any plan of writing a book, but he could see that I was clearly a rising talent that had captured a lot of people's imagination through the work that had been published in, at that time, print media, let alone digital, which hadn't even been born. So I just got about it. It was a tough book to do because we had almost no budget. I was an unknown talent in terms of a writer. But we cobbled it together with existing archival film, which was really hard. I burned through 4 art directors on that book because it was a Herculean task.
Yikes.
Well, I know, yikes is exactly right. But I had to work with existing film. I couldn't, at that point, as an untested author, I didn't have the budget to commission like Bill Abramowitz to shoot, or William Waldron to shoot. So you get a consistency, in the imagery. We had to take 24 different projects and knit it all together to tell one narrative tale. But that's where the first one started. And it turns out that courageously, at that time I was working with Anna Wintour, the editor-in-chief of Vogue. I asked her if she would write the foreword. She didn't blink. And she said, yes, I'd be delighted. I'd be honored to write forward. And that gave me more confidence too. And I think that really helped because she took a snapshot view. Clearly the most powerful woman in the fashion industry in the world wrote a foreword to a book with someone that many people needed to know more about. And it turns out that it was a great primer. It was a great book of knowledge. It was a great, kind of helpful outline. It was design basics. What are the foundations, of good design? And what's the language we need to know? And that basically was the start point for, and 5 books later, we still have information to share. We still have something to give.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So just a call from Charles, and you were off. It
was a cold call, and it turned out to be a very productive relationship.
And how about for you, Kate? How did it kick off for you? Was it a call in the night for you as well?
Well, yeah, almost actually. I mean, we were thinking we would do a book, but we didn't really know how, where, or when. But the thing that we had was we had our own photography, so we owned all the imagery, which was a very important thing for us. So we had there was a line in the projects, if you like, because it was all shot with the same eye. And in fact, Charles Myers called us too and said, you've got a book in you.
Celery, we're waiting for you.
God,
he really is a whore. Just keeps calling everyone.
No, I mean, I had from a few, friends and colleagues that have published before, they were like, oh my God, it's so much work, you will not believe it. And I thought, it'll be some work, I'm prepared. But it was a lot more than I thought it would be, from A to Z. It still is, as it's it's just come out, so it's still a lot of work. But I don't know, we just kind of jumped in. You get a call like that from someone like Charles, and you just go, well, what are you going to say? We're going to make this happen. So that was it. We just started.
Well, actually, I think relative to what you said, a lot of people, actually should say no if they're not ready. It's like, what are you going to say? Really think about it, because it is a Herculean task. It is a very big commitment. And launching your first book, it's got to stick. So if anyone who's participating today and watching this is looking for helpful information, pause. I mean, really think about it. If you get a call from a publisher that we'd like to publish your book, or if you have even an inkling that you would like to publish a book, make sure you have what you need in terms of the tools and the resources to put a great book into market. And if it means waiting for a year to do so, wait the damn year. It will benefit everyone.
Right. Celery, did you get a call as well, or how did your first book come? I guess that's just how it happens.
Well, I'll speak to Jeffrey's point about not being prepared and not knowing what you're getting into, because that's how I started. I had been featured in a New York Times article titled very provocatively to the design world, "The New Traditionalists." Penelope Green had interviewed, I guess, about 5, I would say, young women. I don't know if there were men included. I can't remember the story, talking about sort of the next generation of designers, kind of coming of age. And I think the angle in the story was that we were all somehow to the manner born. And that's what was provocative about it, was talking about how there's a rising class, was the word, because again, it was all geared to sort of take a pinch at that idea of young decorators who were sharing the history of good taste, but blending it with the fashion of their times. And that concept is what I think landed me the book deal, though I had nothing to do with it other than being a interviewee. And you know, I think book editors are always looking for a concise concept to sell the book. And I think the word new traditionalist resonated with one of the young editors at Clarkson Potter. So she said, wait, I'm going to go get one of these new traditionalists and we'll write a book about being a new traditionalist. So I feel like I was a fish that got caught in a catch-all net. And I was asked to come into Clarkson Potter, where it was kind of intimidating and exciting. I think at the time I was maybe 28, something in there. And there were like 5 or 6 people in the room around a big table, and they actually made me a cappuccino. So I was really impressed. So, you know, when you can see out a window, and there were 5 people who like had something in a schedule and they showed up to talk to you, I felt big. And as they were discussing, you know, the possibility of a book, my answer was, yeah, well, I'd love to do that. I have this idea, that idea, and I was just completely slinging shit. And I got myself all excited, you know, when you're in that like manic state of getting away with something.
Totally.
A lot can come out. So I walked out of the meeting with a, you know, potential book deal. And then I went back to my house and was feeling really all happy with myself. And then Judith Regan called, who was another book editor with another publishing house and had done many books that I had read, verging on sort of like trashy and exciting. But she'd also just done Kelly Wearstler's book, which at that time was the epitome of glamour and amazing design to me. So I will stop there because I assume we're going to talk further, but I got into this wide-eyed and stupid.
Okay, that's your preface then. So, all right, you're in there, you have like the book deals coming together. You know, Jeffrey, for you, how did your most recent book come together? Because it's a little bit of a different idea with everyday decorating than your typical designer monograph. So how did that come together with Rizzoli? How did you package that for them?
Well, I got a phone call from Jacqueline Terrebonne, and she said she wanted, no, I'm sorry. That's what I want to do is obviously, you know, each book should have a singular voice or a singular vision. 5 books are a lot, you know, and thankfully I have a lot to say, and I still have a large audience that wants to listen. It seemed that it was a good time. My last book was American Master, which was a great, big, wonderful, glossy portfolio book, and I thought that we had really accomplished a lot with that book in terms of a great snapshot, of the past few years' work. What I wanted to do was put a book into market that was more designed, educational, tip driven, helpful hints, and where I could look at images and let people understand like why they were powerful and what the components of good design are. I think that educated clients basically make for better clients. Anyone who understands what they're getting will like it more when they get it than somebody who doesn't understand what our shared goals are. But the difficult task of this book, of everyday decorating, which let's just give a little share here so everyone sees it. This one harks back basically to design basics. So book 5 actually sort of circled back to the knowledge that book 1 shared with the viewers, but brings everything up to date. It's a book of captions, not basically of content, which is a harder book to write, meaning there's an image on a page and helpful information boiled down to very strategic words. The essential essence of each room is distilled. And it turns out, as you know, because you helped me get this thing together, if you're writing a big opening chapter or an intro or a forward, that could be 2,500 words. It's relatively easy to get 2,500 words on paper. It's harder if you're opening a chapter which has to boil down to 250 words, because then you have to edit down, boil it down to a 250 word opener. It's 10 times more difficult to boil 250 words in an opening page down to 25 word caption, because every word, every letter count. That's where you need a great writer like Jackie. That's where you need a great editor. That's where you need a great publisher, because then it's really, really a Herculean task to deliver in a single sentence the entire vision of the image in front of you. And I think that was really the driver. My next book, I'm sure, will be another big, wonderful, glossy portfolio book, but this seemed about the right time to get more information into market that was helpful, that I could share. And I remember, and this is a really important one, relative to anyone who wants to get a book published or get a new book into market. The advice that I share with everyone is, as you write a book, if you can't help people do something better or do something new, then don't write the book. Let them see things that are new to their eyes. Share that, or help them do something better, which has been frustrating. Those are great foundations for getting a good book into market. It's more than pictures.
So was it difficult to sell in that concept? Did you have to bring sort of like, here's a spread of what I think it would look like, or did they just catch on to?
Well, I think all of the authors here, I think Kate and Celery, I think we also have to pitch a book, don't we? I mean, we all have to deliver a concept, and it has to pass muster, and your own basically, and you have to believe in it, just like a cover try. I mean, all my covers had to go basically before a committee. And with Rizzoli, I mean, you've got Rizzoli and Random House, and you've got all these different publishers, all basically trying to make educated decisions. And the covers that you see that basically get approved are the ones that you have to believe in most, because there's lots of other people who will chime in. So a pitch a book is a very, very important deal. People simply don't rubber stamp book. These are expensive things to produce, and everyone wants to make sure that they're going to value engineer their decisions. I mean, Celery, did you have to pitch your book and bring a concept to the table, or do you have to back it up?
Well, I got to start with someone else's concept. Thank God. That's what got me in there. So I will be forever grateful for Penelope Green's article and Eliza Fogelson for thinking that was something she needed to find an answer to. So I feel like I left out being their answer. But I guess I've always enjoyed writing, and the challenge of putting something that felt honest and scary too, out about what design meant at that time to me, was so intimidating that I had to get it done, because it was the case of like, well, if I don't finish this race, really, I suck. It was fear that propelled me. With the issue of design by committee, I was given a pretty free hand, but maybe my editor, Eliza, just made me think the ideas, many of them were mine, as she constrained me very
Good
carefully.
editor.
Yeah, Eliza's fantastic. And I think her point was always, nobody needs to read a book, and they read a book to see something that delights them or to learn something. So she made sure that we provided takeaway in every page. But when you talk about the covers and the committee thing, it's funny, since I haven't put my third book out yet. It comes out this April. And the big conflict was actually the back of the book. Because here, I'll show you, I'll do a flash. This is the cover, which was fun and easy, and we all agreed. There was no trouble. It's like sort of the entrance to the place I'm writing about, the entrance to the story, but the back is a naked picture of my then 5-year-old child, butt cheeks to the camera, racing for the pool. And this is where I think once you've proven yourself with the first or a second book, you get a little bit more control on your third. And instead of assuming that this was a book of child pornography, I was able to advocate for the idea that it captured the spirit of the place. And
Right.
it was about launching yourself naked into the pool and, you know, sunburning children and cute little butt cheeks. So I think the trick is telling the truth over time, and then becoming known for it, and then people will trust you. That was where it went from book 1, 2 to 3.
So for this book 3, though, it's very much about one singular place. Was that the concept that you went to Rizzoli with, or how did that sort of evolve into not just a monograph of all these wonderful places Celery has done, but this is the place and the soul that I want to talk about right now?
I actually said that I wouldn't do my next book until I got to do a book about this place.
Okay.
I'd completely forgotten that. That was another case. By then, Eliza and I are still working. I went and found her, you know, again at Rizzoli. She moved from Clarkson Potter to work on my third book. And at this point, they were like, all right, I mean, this could be repetitive, this could be boring, this could feel tight and constrained, but you know you're not supposed to do that. So get this out first, and then we'll talk about your next book. And now it's so hard and long. I can't imagine doing another, but
Right.
I'm thrilled with this one.
Oh, good. And how about you, Kate? Did you know the concept of your book going in? Did you know, like, here's the breadth of my work, you've been accumulating all these wonderful images, let's package it together? What was your sort of pitch and process?
We really had to work out how we wanted it to look. That was the key thing. I did it with my husband. He art directed the whole project and shot every photograph.
Wow.
So we had it very contained in terms of it being a family affair, and you know, we work 24/7 together, so we're very used to it. It wasn't without its battles, let's say, but drama. But
like, you're still married though, right?
still married, yeah, it's 30 something.
That's amazing.
We're doing okay. We're doing okay. We've been locked just together, you know, so it's
Yeah.
but
Well, I have 5 books, which means I never got married. That's my timeline.
I think it was, we sort of entered into our sort of creative lives together, really. So we've always been this partnership. And we had a very clear idea of what we thought we wanted, but it was actually getting that on paper and trying to work it out and lay it out and make it happen with the colors we wanted to include and the references we wanted to include and the story that we wanted to include. Because in fact, we didn't set out to really tell a story actually, but it turned out that that's what we did. We told a story. So the story is about me, and it's a lot wordier than I would have set out to do, in fact, but people seem to respond to that because it's a story about somebody in this business, and how do we think, how do we arrive at a certain decision? And I as it evolved, I began to realize that was actually very much part of the way we were approaching it. I mean, I'm not sure if I've got 5 books in me. I probably have maybe one more if I'm really lucky, but it was, the whole thing had to be so concise. And Rizzoli basically had their hands off it a lot of the time because, we were struck with a pandemic. There was all kinds of things that happened. It was a very difficult year to bring a book out, obviously, because we were in Europe and we couldn't move. But on the other hand, it wasn't a bad idea to bring a book out in the pandemic because people seem to have been buying and reading a lot more books than usual. So, it's a win-win, I think, for us. But the story was
naturally evolve for you in that way as you began like really putting pen to paper and thinking about it, or did you also have an editor who was shaping that for you and pushing you and guiding you, or pushing and guiding you without your knowing?
Well, we had an editor who was definitely in the background if we needed technical advice. That was mainly, I think, the position. And of course, Charles in the end would step in and go, no, I like this more than I like that. There weren't so many changes, actually. I think we presented a kind of very concise package, and it tended to work together. What we presented worked together. If you start taking bits and pieces out of it, as we all know, even when you do a room, you take 2 pieces out, you have to go like, oh, how do we make the 3rd thing work with the 5th thing? That seemed to happen in the book too, that it had a natural flow to it, I think. The sizes of the imagery, the amount of white space left around it, it was a sort of game, I think.
Yeah.
So we didn't really have any other people involved, actually, except for the writer, who was very involved, Linda O'Keefe. She was our sounding board because she'd done a lot of books, so she knew, what would work best here and so on and so forth. So it was the 3 of us, in fact.
I found that the most exciting part in terms of the creativity of getting a book out was working with my art director, Doug Tershon. That's really when you see the merging of your thoughts in the written word and the images which you've selected. And I've always found that to be the most exhilarating and the thrilling part when you see the layouts get back to you. Well, that's part of the creative process. And I think that we work with an editor or we work with a writer, but then you hand it all to someone to sort of pour it all in and make sense of it. And to the same kind of valued relationship that we have with our design teams, with our vendors, where we create and craft things together that are better than where we started. I mean, my sort of decorator's math of 1 + 1 = 3, that the objects when combined are more important than when taken individually. And by the time it goes to the art director, and Doug Tershon is just supremely talented art director, and he's worked with me on many books. You wait in anticipation of getting the first kind of roughs return, and it's always exhilarating, and it's a surge of creativity that happens. I mean, so did you find that? I mean, do you enjoy that sort of layout process and where things are going to fall on the page, and if they're in the gutter, or that there's white space, or that surrounds it, or or full bleeds?
I worked with Michelle Cohen, and I was so excited. I also put this book together through the pandemic, so all communication was digital. I didn't even have a printer in my house. So yeah, it was incredible. So we're flipping through things on the computer. I would feel so relieved when I could hand things off to Michelle and it would come back in, I guess, when you juxtapose pictures or you blend them, you can make a point just visually that I hadn't even been thinking about at the time I was writing it. And for me to give my baby off and to have it come back and speak another language, it was like, oh wow, you speak Urdu. I so love the collaboration process because it really does show, just like Jeffrey says, in decorating math, 1 and 1 could be 3. It's when you have 4 people working on a book together, it's not 1 times 4, it's suddenly 4 times 4. You've got the impact of 16 people thinking collectively. So I love the process, and I don't know. I think it builds itself as you progress, because you're talking about your work initially, so you feel like you know it all. But by the time the book is done, I think you say a lot more than you understood you knew in the beginning.
Right.
Because a lot of us are busy.
Yeah.
You can explain your reasoning for choosing something, but at the end of the poem, right, and all the different words you chose, you can take away something that actually is a lot more telling of your experience, your wishes, your hopes. Like, it gets bigger than the moment in which it was conceived.
Right.
I think what would be really interesting, because we're all talking about our working experience with editors and with writers and with publishers and art director. I'd like to take 1 minute and just throw it back to Jackie, because Jackie, I mean, honestly, you're a writer. You're an editor, you're an editor-in-chief. You worked with me on a book. You see presentations, you see copy, you see images, you see pitches all the time of projects of people that would like to be published in gallery. Like, what's the defining moment for you on your side, from your side, looking back out at us and looking out at the viewers who are here? What would you be looking for if somebody wanted to pitch something to you? What's the defining qualities that you, as editor-in-chief, or as an editor or a writer, how does it work from your side coming back out?
Right. I think it's something a little that Celery hit on before with the article that Penelope Green did, but it's like, what is the single sentence? Like, what is the package? What captures your audience's attention? If you're like, this is a book about X, or this is a story about X. And that's how I look at it when I look at books. That's how I look at it when I look at stories that are going to be in a magazine. Like, how can you describe this in a single sentence? Because if it has enough power to be able to like fit into that, then people have a reason to read it and a reason to be like, I read this story and it was about this, or I saw this and it was about that. And then on the same time, like, great design, beautiful imagery, something that you feel like you haven't seen before. Or, if I look through projects for the issue, like, there has to be that one image, at least one, that stays in my mind that I can just like recall off the top of my head, although I've seen 20 other houses that day.
Yeah.
So
don't you find when you see the books, the monographs or whatever that we've done, there is this kind of, there's a stamp on each one, isn't there? It's our stories. You can't really avoid the fact that that's what we do. We do that with the projects we do. So you bring that to everything, don't you? That one thing. And it's not it's not often that you can find the word for that one thing, let's say, but it's there in the imagery. So Jeffrey's that thing and Celery's that thing. I mean, Celery, it's funny, I have a wallpaper sample from you for 20 years, like waiting, on 15 maybe, but it's just waiting there for one day. I know exactly what it looks like. My name is on the back, and
you might want to check stock. Your PS, your reserve has expired.
I thought, oh my goodness, so nice. One day there'll be a place where that's going to work for me. And it's just, I knew you were on this call. I was like, that girl.
Oh, I hope so.
Palms and fronds and things. I just think the cover of the book, the new book, it looks so enticing. Sort of
it really
casual.
Is. It really is.
Talking of which, actually, Jeffrey, also, I mean, I must admit, the Ottomans on the cover of your book, I just saw that picture and I was like, yeah, I want to live in that room. So it's just, I don't know, you're drawn into these things that people do, and this what's the word? The sort of aura.
I think that we're as an author, you're you're building a story, and there's a narration, and a flow through, which is really important. Although we'd like to feel that we are as competent with different design vernacular and vocabulary, that we're all, I think, capable of doing work which is traditional and doing things more modern or contemporary. There's still a flow through narrative that needs to move the reader through a book. And I think they also really they're going to be looking to experienced designers and brand designers to bring information to them that which they feel is current and adds to their lives. Really, decorators are barometers of change. And what we see going on in the world that surrounds us is an indicator of where the world will be moving. And so I think we're in a very fortunate position to be able to put books together that reflect our lives in a contemporary world. I think that none of our clients, I think, although we can look at beautiful pictures from the past, none of our clients want to live in any other time or any other place. No one, I don't think we're writing books which are nostalgia driven. They're contemporary books that reflect the lives that people want to live today. I think that has great value, because what we're putting into market will basically move the market in that direction or reinforce it for another 2 to 3 year cycle. Because technically, a publisher working with any author would like to assume that they were going to put a book into market basically every 3 year cycle. So you can, and that's when the market starts to visibly move and shift, and then you want to address that.
So I have to ask a question that's maybe a little less creative and fun than some of the other things we've talked about, but how do you get through the negotiations part, putting together a contract? Do you have someone that you work with to help you look at all of those things? How does that part, they want the book, you want the book, everybody's happy. How do you know what to ask for, what to look for? Because that can be scary.
It is serious. Let's go to Celery. You jump in on that one. You've got a great business mind.
Well, no, I'm just willing to ask for help a lot.
Right.
When I had the first offer from Clarkson, and then I spoke with Judith Regan, I realized that I had no clue, and I just was so excited to have this opportunity. So I called a literary agent at ICM named Jen Joel, who some friends of mine had worked with, and she flat out gave me the perfect advice. She said, "You don't know what you're doing. And this is going to be a lot more expensive and painful than you understand. So I would advise you to work with somebody, like pick the team that's going to do the work with you, not the cult of personality option. Also pick the team that's going to give you the most money to start with, because books do and can start with an advance, and you're going to dig yourself a very deep hole anyway, but at least knowing you're in partnership financially to some degree with your publishing house is important. And so she went and negotiated it for me, and they're still taking a small fee.
Right.
Well, that's good, because it's
after that point,
right, but that means if they're taking fees, that means the book's selling. No.
Yeah, it's a fee on something that came to life, that had I gone with somebody who wasn't going to assist me on the first book as artfully, or really hold my hand at the parts where I was ready to quit and throw it all away, and give me enough money to hire photographers or buy photo rights. So I think, quick answer, there are people out here who help navigate that. And in addition to pitching yourself to a publisher, it's wise to look at some of the book agents.
I don't think it's just wise. I think it's essential. I mean, that's the answer to the question.
They'll help you get to the right, in the right door.
Well,
yeah, and I think
it's expensive, as we all know. Getting all these people on board will require not only the opportunity to tap into some reserves that an advance might give you, but you may be self-funding in some part of this, or part of the way through. People don't just sign contracts and dole out money. These are value engineered opportunities, and the goal is that if you can, for the publisher and you after they take their cut to generate royalties for your effort. They're not cash cows. Let's be very clear about it. They're not. You're not going to be able to give up your day job because you got a book, and and the royalties are fine, but they're not even close to what you should be doing when you're basically doing your primary craft, which is design. But they're pleasant to do. And it's wonderful to see what you have crafted and what you have developed, share it with others. There's value in that. But yeah, I mean, get great advice. That's why people come to us. That's why clients come to hire any of us, is they want great advice. Same reason that we would go to an agent to help us negotiate the terms of our relationship.
And how do you fit this all into your schedule? I mean, you have a busy schedule with your clients as it is. How do you layer in? I mean, these are time-consuming projects. Books don't write themselves. You have to think about so many things. And how do you pick some weekends to work on it? Do you take some time off and sort of figure it out? How did you, structure a schedule to create your book?
I think you just go into it. Probably in my case, relatively naively, but with everybody saying behind me, it's going to be very busy, it's going to take a lot of time. We just absorbed it somehow. It was something that we probably had to look at almost every day for the year that we were in really sort of pre-production for it, if you like. I mean, there was an hour at least of every day, and my husband was on it for probably the best part of 6 months, I would say, more or less. So, and that's somebody that, he's in my family, I'm not paying him. So you can imagine it's a very expensive and time-consuming process.
Right.
But do I look back and say, I wish I hadn't done a book? No, of course not. It was fantastic. What a great experience, just to have something that's, that stays there in front of you.
Right. But I think that the nature of our business, like business in general, is that it is timeline, deadline, and milestone driven. So if that's the business model that we use for our projects, it would be the same business model that we would apply to the deadline of a book. You have certain submission dates that you have to meet, in order to meet a publication date. And basically what we're doing is trying to manage our time during the course of every business day. Don't do it if you don't have time. But you have to manage your expectations of your clients. I mean, I know that, Jackie, you can speak to this. I mean, you and I, when we wrote Everyday Decorating, we had to carve out extra time in the evening or on a weekend.
We spent lots of Mondays together.
And they were lovely. They were lovely days together. And that was the day we devoted to writing a book. And it actually didn't interfere, to the best of my knowledge, with the day-to-day operation, Monday through Friday. But and there's a couple of days that we just poured a little glass of wine and got to it. I think it's a blur, but am I remembering that all correctly?
Yes, we'd have just like a nice glass of white wine, and I'd bring some pimento spread.
Yeah. Yum.
Snack and wine and get to work. It's so true. It's so true. I just know how much time goes into a book. And I think if you haven't done one before, you wouldn't even imagine or be able to calculate the hours that it really takes.
No, it's true. Absolutely.
It's much more than you would think. And then we're going to go to questions from the audience soon. So please put your questions in the Q&A chat. But I wanted to ask each of you, we have so many people watching today who really want to know, like, how do I get that book deal? So from each of you, I'd love to hear, like, what is your best advice? Like, what is your single number one, this is what you should do to anyone watching us today?
I'd start with you married your photographer. That was smart. I think if we're talking within the design world, books are a visual medium. and it's the thing you have to show first. So without some representation or a partner who can bring your images to life, you're not going anywhere. So start with either a great photographer or good photography, because the words can come along with it, but you can't start. You're never going to convince anybody unless you can show them what you're writing about.
Yeah, that's great. Kate, what's your advice?
Well, from my lucky standpoint, in that, yes, I married him. Having a story to, going back to that, not necessarily a story verbally again, but a visual story. So we have projects in the book. We also have other things that I kind of collect and see, and and I wanted it very much to be about that. So that was the concept, and I think it works if there's some sort of story, whether it's everyday decorating and it's how to improve on your own life, or you're doing a big American portfolio. That's a concept. I think we've seen lots of books that are just a bedroom, a bathroom, a living room, a bedroom, a bathroom, a living room. That's everywhere. You need to have something that ties it together, where somebody's flicking through it from the back, in a bookstore, should they ever be open again, and go, oh, this seems to have some kind of atmosphere that I want to explore. That for me is something that you have to try to find.
That's great. And Jeffrey?
If you think you're going to make a buck, think again. Don't do it for that purpose. The reason to do the book is you've got something to say in an audience that wants to listen to it. It shouldn't be driven by revenue. It shouldn't be done, driven, by the net end result. So the return on it should be done because you're committed, to finding the time and finding the people. You put together a team to deliver a beautiful book that can sell and sell well over a long period of time. Approach it from a business standpoint, not necessarily, solely from the visual message. How do I make what I have in front of me, the resources that I have in front of me, whether they be human resources or creative resources, or visual resources, how do I make something that is unique in market, that will draw people to it?
That's great advice. All of that is such good advice. We have some questions coming in right now. So I'm just going to throw it open to our audience. But Mary Fitzgerald's asking, which comes first, the images or the words? So
images.
I think you need the images first, because you have to prove you have them. Like, words come much, much quicker. You can do words later. You can write to the photo.
I agree. I mean, that's exactly that. I agree. What you do is you've got thousands of images available to you, or at least indicators of what those images are. We're all familiar with our projects. We're all familiar with our archival resources. And the key is to figure out how they all fit together. And then the words are what link them. The words are the connective tissue.
I think also that the fact that when you complete a project, it's very important that you actually record it professionally. Because the idea of going back to that, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line is really tricky. It's better to do it as you go, so you've got the photography in the bag if your client allows you to do it. I mean, not every client wants you to, of course. So we're very lucky, I think, that many of our clients do not mind that their properties are photographed, but get it done as soon as you finish the project, because it will just drag and it will go away, and it'll be far harder if you wait.
And is that something that you have clients agree to in the very beginning of a project? Is that sort of part of your initial discussion with a client too? Or is that something you finish it and then you ask them if it's okay?
Early on, I would say in my case, it's either something they really are quite cool about, or they're absolutely not cool about. And I'd probably rather know. So we do discuss it in the early stages in my case.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's an approval process that has to happen in the procurement of any image. And you want to make sure that you adhere to that process. Just legally, you want to make sure that everything that you publish, has the rights and authorization to do so. So there's a lot of legwork and heavy lifting to getting all those authorizations. during up front, I think, to make sure that you're not crafting a book around something that you don't have access to.
One important point I think to remember is even if a photograph has been taken and it's of your work, you don't usually have rights to it. And it
That's right.
somehow surprised me a few times, even though this should have been obvious. You still pay for photos in the format of using them in a book again.
You have to buy them back, right?
Unless when you initially worked with the photographer, it's in the contract that you own the rights for book publication. So it's something people should just be wary of. I don't think the photographers are fleecing anybody, but it's a source of important income for them to come back and negotiate the rights. So that's just a think ahead, but maybe even before you're certain you're doing a book, to see if you can work with the right.
We love working with our photographer. If you're working with multiple, if I'm on a location shooting for gallery or shooting for other, that relationship, and I'm usually on every shoot. That relationship is a strong, buildable relationship, and it's glorious to work side by side with a photographer. And I respect what they do because they're basically the vehicle for delivering our project into the eyes of the public, and they earn their keep, and go into it. You either are going to have to negotiate with them, for credit or for revenue that they've earned. I mean, they are basically also trying to support their team, their offices, and most importantly, their own family. To be fair, and be appreciative.
And then, do you prefer to have the images in the layout? Do you send those out, get your layout, work with the art director, and then apply the words at the end? Do you think that's the best process, or is it?
It's a little bit of both. I think you're looking for the photograph that's going to embody what it is you want to say. Mm-hmm. And you're really grateful when you put a photo on a page and it begs additional commentary, and those become your captions, or it becomes the reason that photograph ended up in that chapter. So it's a bit of both.
We allowed actually a kind of spacing for the photographer, for the words, in the same way that we allowed spacing for the photography. So we had a sort of format that Linda had to fill. So we knew that up front, that there was, this scale, and it was this column, and it would go next to that image, and then she would fill that story. So we built it like a jigsaw, really, in our case. The words were, they were very important for us, but they were also important as a visual element as well as something you read. So we had this whole sort of juxtaposition of image, words, block, like building blocks, really. So it limited the words, or it expanded the words, depending on the page, really. We fought very hard not to have captions on the page, actually, and then I'm so grateful we did. That was something from the experienced writer and art director at Rizzoli to tell me, you want the captions on the page. And we were like, no, it will mess up the photography. But in fact, thank you to them. We listened. It works much more beautifully.
Yeah, I think as Celery was saying, you have those beautiful pictures and you look at them and someone wants to know more. The beauty captivates them into wanting to know that additional bit of information. Yeah. And then I have a question from Joan Alexander about, and I think, Jeffrey, you mentioned this earlier, but how is the industry educating the affluent consumer via books? And I think, Jeffrey, you talked about that a little, but about how an educated client is sort of the best one to have.
Well, I think an educated client is an ideal situation. Also, an educated consumer, if they're buying licensed products, and an educated designer or coordinator. I mean, I think we're all basically better with enlightenment. I think that even if you're just looking at a picture on a page without any captions, or without any content, expository content, you will be better for it because you'll take something away, you'll learn something from that. So education and enlightenment you come either as a primary or secondary goal of a book. We get books because we want to know something that we didn't know going into it, and books help do that. Whether again they're print or digital information, we pull information, helpful information away from that. Even if it's as simple as I like that and I don't like that, that's valuable and helpful information.
And do you see clients bring you back your own books and say, I like this, or do clients use them as reference points of your own work and to sort of express what they're interested in and how they want their homes to look?
Well, I would like to think that they do. I mean, I would also like to make sure that my clients bring visual images to me that I've not seen before that I could learn from. So I wouldn't expect that any potential client coming to me would only be navigating or tabbing, pictures of my work. I would like to see pictures of other designers' work or landscape designers or automobile designers, fashion designers. These all influence what we do, whether it's color. I mean, I walk home, all the time in New York City and on Madison Avenue, I'm constantly, and I look in the windows not because I need some snazzy pair of high-heeled shoes or some handbag. I'm looking for color. I'm looking for indicators of where a market is going. I'm looking for texture. This is all basically, information harnessing or information gathering, and I think that books help us do that too.
That's great. Celery, do you find that clients reference your books, or do they come to you with different sort of tears, or?
I think now most of my clients use digital references. I think they'll pick through the world of images on Pinterest or Instagram because it's easier to catalog for them. But when there is a designer they really like, I think after a point of narrowing, they'll purchase the book because it's an object they're happy to have. And I mean, we forget that these books aren't just about information. They are also a tool for life. So a lot of my clients will buy a book because it's someone they admire or something that shows their interest, or because they like the cover. Or, I actually take most of the covers off the books because I used to think of it as like even my book here, it's like, this is like, it says Crest and it says toothpaste, and I'm not interested in the sales tool. I always want to see what the book is. Like,
Okay.
I like the thing that has no name on it.
Oh, that's so pretty.
I tear all my paperwork, my glossies off, and I put the books on the table because they're objects. And I think a lot of my clients do the same.
And we didn't do a cover, we just did fabric. So you can't take it off.
So you're smart, but it's
on the
it's a
spine.
beautiful color. And yeah, it's people buy them for it's a tool.
I wanted it to have my handwriting again. That was another thing. I wanted it to be my writing. So
That's so cool.
Something that we were very strong about when we were working on the cover, that it wasn't just some kind of typeface. So I've got that word written on everything. It's on the back of my phone. It's everywhere.
Your mantra.
Yeah.
And then Diane Doran's Sakes wants to know, how do you choose and work with writers?
That has to be Jeffrey to you, right?
Oh gosh, I guess so. But I mean, I think the way that you work with a writer is making sure that there's a real communication filter. I certainly have a lot to say, but I need a good editor to boil it down to the essence. And a writer who's in sync with you is a writer who's going to build on your own message, on the message of your work. And I remember even when Anna Wintour wrote the foreword to Design Basics, she boiled it down in her foreword and saying, Jeffrey's the sort of decorator who takes your own taste and makes it better. That's exactly the relationship I would like to have with a writer. Someone who takes my work and makes it better, and basically takes my words and makes them more succinct and more valuable.
Yeah.
Celery, do you agree? I mean, it's a working relationship and a really, really important one.
Mm.
I think it's also somebody who can beat her and make me cough out my thoughts, intentions. A lot of it's about somebody who can hold me to the discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah, we decided to go and just have a kind of retreat together, Linda and I. And so we all ended up in France, where I am now.
Oh my God, that sounds revolting. I don't want to retreat with you, Jackie.
Jeffrey,
I
why
liked our Sunday afternoon with a little rosé and, you know,
well,
and
that's
pimento spread. Do I? No.
way more drinking than interviewing. We really had to crawl to the airport after that. It was, but you know, when you start into those conversations, because the conversation was really about us, and everything just gets so kind of on the table. You know, darkest stories, and you know, it was really interesting. 4 intensive days, but she got so much material out of it. Actually, I think that she could have written a novel, really, if it would have been an interesting novel, God knows. But it was just lots of things that I wouldn't even think to say normally. So,
all right, well, perhaps that can be our next panel together, design novels.
yeah.
How to write a design novel. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined us today. I think this getting a book deal conversation has been really lively and interesting, and hopefully inspired you to write a book, or convinced you maybe you have a little more thinking to do before diving into the deep end. Our guests, Jeffrey Bilhuber, Celery Kimball, Kate Hume, you've all been so informative, and it's great to have your spirit and energy. Everyone should go to rizzoliusa.com and purchase these fantastic books. Jeffrey's Everyday Decorating, Celery's, you know, pre-order now, Island Whimsy, and Kate Hume's Elan. They're all great books to have in your home and spend time with and educate yourself and just be inspired. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you for having
us.
Okay.